Please welcome to the stage CEO and President Ceres, Mindy Luber.
Okay, folks, nothing like getting my pages out of order. Good morning. I know it's not morning. Many of you have already been here for 2, 3, 4 events. We're all running around the city with 5 places to be at one time. We're trying to figure out how to deal with traffic. But in the end, what is terrific about Climate Week and bringing us together is the goodwill, the energy, the examples of change, and what we can make happen and what we can make happen together. So yes, I am Mindy Luber. I'm the CEO of Ceres, an organization that's worked with many of you over the last 20, 30 years. At Ceres, we have been at this for 35 years, working with investors and companies and policymakers and global partners to mobilize the private sector towards a responsible, sustainable way of doing business and a cleaner, more resilient economy to prove that profits and the sustainable future of our planet and our people are absolutely things that go hand in hand and that don't conflict with each other. We've made extraordinary progress over the last several decades. Think about this. It was not that long ago, the idea that investors, businesses, and capital market leaders have a business and economic imperative to confront climate change was almost unheard of. When we tried to approach business leaders, financial leaders, talking about climate risk and not climate change, they resisted even the discussion. But think about where we are today, how much we've changed, how extraordinary we've seen change, and the kind of progress. Not enough. Nobody is suggesting we sit on our laurels. Nobody is suggesting we are anywhere near where we need to be. But let's think about today. Climate change, water scarcity, and nature loss are widely understood as financial imperatives that must be dealt with. I know of no company that could deal and run manufacturing facilities without enough water. I know no company that's in fashion or products that doesn't need an environment where they could count on and depend on. I know no company that is not threatened by climate in multiple ways. And they are, and it's clear, and they are acting. Private sector action is evolving beyond setting net zero targets. That was good enough a number of years ago. I'm going to get to 1.5 or 1.7, or I'm going to get somewhere. Goals are good, but they are not good without clear plans to go without them. And now increasingly, we are working with hundreds of companies and investors to put in place climate action plans, transition plans. If you got goals, show us how you're going to get there. How are you going to meet them? What are the short, medium, and long-term goals? What are you doing to follow up? How are you going to be accountable? And how are you going to show us what you've actually accomplished? It's these kind of clear, specific, boots-on-the-ground plans that we need to see and that we're starting to see. And many of you are leading the way in doing them. And climate action from a financial perspective is now baked into our public policy landscape. We've established new disclosure policies, giving investors long sought-out information about companies' emissions and the financial risks that threaten their investments and their portfolios. And federal investments have only bolstered private sector activity. Think about the Inflation Reduction Act. We all know about it, we talk about it. The biggest, largest climate and clean energy plan in the world has already unleashed billions of dollars in clean energy investments across the country. We are seeing change, we are making a difference. Over the next hour, you'll hear about how businesses are taking advantage of the federal incentives that they were designed to invest in clean energy, and about how states from coast to coast are working to protect the freedom to invest when some say investors and companies ought not to be acting on climate change. And you'll hear about plans for COP29 and how to be part of the most comprehensive call for government action to accelerate the necessary private capital flows to build a prosperous economy. Now, with all of these changes and good news that you will hear, and I am marveling at the stories I'm hearing across the city this week and in every day of my life, we have now seen, we have all seen, we have collectively seen some pushback about why companies and investors ought not to be acting on climate or on DEI, on other values, which frankly enhance capital rather than deplete capital. And it's a call we never could have imagined, companies being attacked because they are considering climate change or water shortage, or investors being told that, in fact, they're in breach of their duty by considering climate or diversity. All I could say on that is, keep doing what you're doing. Nothing could be further from the truth. Consumers, employees, shareholders, they know, and they are telling the companies and investors they work with, that acting on climate is not only good for the economy, it is about building a future. And frankly, folks, it really is the moment in history. We are on the right side of history. And $1 billion telling us that we're not is not going to change the science, the economics, the facts of what we're trying to do. So we're going to keep going. And for all of you who are doing it, thank you. The private sector has a clear role to play, is playing, is coming up with technology and transitions. We need to keep pushing each other, but getting there. And now, to have a conversation about getting there, I'm delighted to be able to invite a friend, a leader, really one of the sage, wise people on these issues, former White House National Climate Advisor, former EPA administrator, and currently the managing co-chair of the powerful coalition, America is All In. I know you all know that Gina is one of the most influential climate leaders in the country and in the world. I'm delighted to call her a friend and invite her up here to join me. Thanks very much. Come on out, Gina. All right, folks, well, let's give Gina an extra hand for all that she has done to help us.
Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you, Gina. I suspect that there is no room that you've all been in over the last 2.5 days, or you will be in for the next couple of days, where we didn't talk about the IRA. And frankly, that's not where we're diving in now. But Gina was instrumental, crucial in helping think it through, what's important to the public sector and frankly to the private sector. So we couldn't be more grateful. It's making a difference. Billions of dollars getting into the hands of the private sector is quite amazing.
Mindy, I really have to say, if you want to talk about who's a climate hero and who's making a difference, look in the mirror, honey. Look in the mirror.
How nice. The people in this room, private sector leaders who are making a difference, so thank you. So Gina, we've got an election coming up, and no, we're not going to have a partisan discussion. Ceres is a C3, nonpartisan, but we know that the world will change in the next 6 weeks or so, both at the federal level, Congress, Senate, state houses, local county governments. How do we think about, regardless of the outcome of what happens in Nebraska and of course what happens at the White House, what does durable climate action look like? Put another way, what gives you hope that regardless of the world out there, we will continue to advance our Paris Agreement goals?
Well, Mindy, I don't have any doubt that we'll continue to move forward, none whatsoever. And I think it's because a couple of things. One is that no one can now ignore the challenge of climate change. And certainly one of the brilliances of starting Ceres was knowing that the corporate community, our business community, understands that we are facing a significant challenge. And it's not just here in the US, obviously, but it's a worldwide and global challenge. And we have to turn that challenge into an opportunity. Look, Everybody is being impacted by climate change. And the reason why I'm very confident that we'll keep moving forward is that if you look at the past couple of years, the kind of technologies and innovation that is spurring in markets everywhere is just remarkable. We just have to grab the damn things and run with them, right? We have to invest in them, and companies are ready to do that. So, and honestly, Mindy, I don't want to, appear too excited about it, but really, Ceres has awakened the corporate community. They have found a platform to have them safely talk about these issues, even in a difficult political arena. And this is what's going to make a big difference, because the business community is ready for it. We have the technologies we need. What we really need to do is just have the courage to continue to run for it. So I'm not a naysayer. I'm really excited about it. And no matter what happens in the election, we're going to run like hell. That's it.
Nothing like positive news. So following that and digging a little bit, the Inflation Reduction Act, and like it or not, $370 billion is a good thing to have in the economy for building where we need to go. How do we really capitalize on it? I know billions of dollars are already moving out, but how do we envision the role of these non-federal actors evolving as the law takes hold? What should we anticipate seeing?
Well, I think one of the best things about the Inflation Reduction Act is probably that it got done.
No question.
That was not a given, and so it was exciting to see it. But what we're seeing over the course of just 2.5 years is really quite astounding. Between the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and CHIPS and Science Act, we're talking about $910 billion of private sector investment. Private sector investment. So when people say, why'd you spend all this money? We didn't spend money, we enticed private sector money. That's what the Inflation Reduction Act did. And so we're talking about huge opportunities already. And one of the exciting things in the Inflation Reduction Act is not just that it's attracted almost $400 billion in investments, but it has provided an opportunity for more resources to be devoted in Republican districts because they're communities that have been left behind. And that money is already spurring 600 and some odd projects, large on-the-ground projects that are meaningful to those communities. And part of that, the excitement about that is that, the folks that are in governing in Republican districts know that these are vital projects that are actually growing hundreds of thousands of new jobs. And it's going to be very difficult to unwind that. And I think all of that is exciting because I think we all know that there are just too many communities that have been left behind for too long. And one of the best things about the Inflation Reduction Act was the commitment to ensure that 40% of those resources actually go to communities most in need. And that's where I believe change happens. I don't think change happens from the federal government and making edicts or laws, as much as it's from human beings seeing their lives get better. And when that happens, others actually can turn from being, negative and upset and desperate into that hope and opportunity framing. And I think that's what we all need to keep doing, because that's what's going to change the world.
And Gina, you are the forever optimist, and we all need that as tough information comes. We're not doing this.
Well, it's because everybody's always treated me so well, especially on the Hill. That's where it comes
from. On the Hill. How many hearings have you had over your
9 million. I practice it. This is what I do.
But
you get yelled at.
There's nobody here who wants to yell at her, right? Right. That's why we probably don't have time for questions. No, Gina has represented all of us well. You made the point, though, and I think it's so important. The IRA is about red states and blue states. It's about every part of our political spectrum. It's about our economy, it's about our humanity, and it's about jobs. Is that breaking through? Are you seeing projects, new jobs in all the right places around our country.
Yeah, you are. I mean, the reason why most of the money is going to Republican districts is because if you look at what's happened over the past 40 or 50 years, those are the areas where they lost jobs. We lost our manufacturing sector in the United States in so many ways, and people needed that investment. It was the right place to go. And the exciting thing is that it's kind of showing up in the international arena a lot. You know, countries all across the world are wondering how they can do something similar. Because it is really about changing the dynamic from one of negativity to a positive relationship with communities and with corporations and workers. And so that's the exciting part. And I am an optimist. I'm never gonna not be, because frankly, I have a family that I love, and I have five grandchildren, and I don't intend to sit around moping. I'm gonna move. And I think we all have to, because the time is now. We see the dangers, we see the concerns, but the opportunities really abound to turn that into a positive framing.
How do we make sure, and for those in this room, how do they play a role in making sure that every one of those dollars gets out into the community? We're talking about, as Gina said, near $400 billion, 40% of which to communities that have been ignored for decades and decades, if not centuries. If there's anything more you would like to see private sector leaders do to make sure those dollars move, to make sure that we're seeing the kind of innovation, new jobs, new manufacturing, and frankly, in the places where people really need it, what more do you want us all to be doing?
Well, Mindy, a lot of what you've done with the private sector has been really quite remarkable. And I think it's been both making sure that corporations continue to push forward on ESG, even when it's been challenged. It just makes sense that the business community would do this work, and your ability and Ceres' ability to actually keep this momentum going has been a gift to all of us. And honestly, it's really all about recognizing that the solutions to climate change, whether they're at local communities or state level or federal level or beyond, the opportunities are real and they're profitable. The one thing that drives me crazy is when everybody says, you know, we can't risk profits to do climate change investments. That is the most insane sentence I've ever heard in my life. Look, you know as well as I do, corporations need to make profits when they invest. Good. That's called solid economic growth. Everybody wants that. And really, we know that the challenges of climate change, if we don't face them, and if we don't grab new technologies and new solutions, will inundate them with losses, not profits. So let's get real here. Let's get excited. Let's make these things profitable. And let's stop the ridiculousness, a challenge on ESG. Really, it's just, to me, it's insane. And I get a little overly excited about this.
Well, being on the right side of history, being on the right side of facts, being on the right side of economics is worthy of getting excited about. And this movement on woke capitalism, on why we ought not to, in the private sector, be considering equity and justice and water shortages and nature and climate, is illogical, makes no sense, and will land on the wrong side of history and on deaf ears. Gina, we're coming to an end, but a final request. What do you encourage this audience to do? Are there other policies we ought to be pushing? Should companies be doing more action plans so they really can commit to where they ought to go? Should they be looking globally or locally? How do every one of these wonderful folks walk out and make a difference?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Good,
You just sort of outlined the three things. I think the most important thing is I think we need to continue to push the envelope. The IRA was good and the bipartisan, all that was good, but we need a now 2.0. What else are we going to do? I don't think we can stop and call this success and be done. But I also think that corporations really need to work together. I think when one stands up, it may get its tweaked nose for standing up and saying all the right things. But if you work as a coalition, if you work together, I think it provides protection for all, and it also allows you to have the courage to stand up and do what's right, not just for people, not just for our communities, but for the companies themselves. And that's what I look forward to seeing happen.
Great. It all makes sense. To each of you in the room who are pushing forward, you are on the right side of history, you are making a difference. Thank you, and to Gina, your leadership is so wonderful and welcome.
Mindy, you're my hero. Thank you.